Hello there! So in today's video, I'm going to be giving you my commentary on what Ray Dalio said in a recent interview where he literally said what he thinks the best investments for the future are going to be. I'm actually going to cover 2 points because the first point I think sets up beautifully his reasoning why he thinks what he thinks we should be investing in is what we think we should be investing in. So you'll see the why as well as the what in this video, if that makes sense. And I'm going to do them in that order. If you're new to this channel, welcome. My name's Andy, and on this channel I like to talk about money and success. If you're interested in making, saving, or investing money, please be sure to hit that subscribe button down below, hit the notification bell, and then you get notified every time I release a new video. And if you enjoyed this video and found it useful, please do remember to give it a thumbs up because that helps the YouTube algorithm, which in turn helps me. And of course, I do appreciate it. Now, if you don't know who Ray Dalio is, where have you been? You've been living under a rock. Literally, look the guy up. But Ray Dalio, in short, he's an American billionaire, investor, hedge fund manager, and author. So that is who he is. Let's have a little look at the video.
Let me ask one question. Given where the United States is in the cycle, one of the things you talk about in your book is reserve currencies. And when you become dominant, you get to have the reserve currency, like the British pound before, US dollar now. Given where we are, why is the US dollar so strong? Is it too strong?
Well, so I think it's important for you and everybody to understand that you shouldn't look at the value of the dollar in relationship to other currencies as much. I mean, they're all bad currencies. So we can get into why Europe is a bad currency and why the yen is a bad currency. They're all bad currencies. And they are all depreciating in buying power, just like the 30s, just like the 70s. They all depreciate in relationship to what...
Now that was just an interesting point. He's talking about them devaluing in buying power. He mentioned 2 dates. He mentioned the 30s and he mentioned the 70s. 2 important things happened in those dates. So the British pound was delinked from the gold standard. So in 1931, the British pound was delinked from the gold standard. It's basically been declining in value ever since. And in 1971, the Americans did the same thing with the US dollar. And basically nowadays, all currencies are what are known as fiat currencies. So they're not backed by any hard, tangible asset, gold. And as a result, they are all falling in buying power. Let's carry on what he's saying.
Can buy. Currency is money. But when we look at them, one in relationship to another, we may not pay attention to that. So that's our existing set of circumstances. You know, okay, the answer is the euro. Are you kidding me? I mean, we can go on about Europe's situation. Wow, oh my God. And then, okay, what are they doing in the end? They're just printing the money, whatever it is. And so the question is, what is a storehold of wealth? You know, money is a medium of exchange or a storehold of wealth. And it's not a good storehold of wealth when the interest rate you're receiving is much less than the inflation rate. So that's what you're seeing happen.
So as he said there, the interest you're receiving is less than the inflation rate because currently in all major countries around the world, we have an inflation problem. The inflation is a lot higher than the interest rates. So you're finding that central banks are currently scrabbling around, increasing their interest rates to try to catch up with inflation. Now, he said an interesting thing earlier there about the currencies all going down. I just want to, and he said how when you look at them compared to each other, it's hard to see. But let me just show you how they're doing compared to each other because I found this quite interesting. So here's the euro. If you're curious as to how the euro's done over the past 10 years against the dollar, well, 10 years ago, the euro would have bought you $1.30. Fast forward to today, and the dollar will buy you all of 97 cents. It's not even on parity. Okay, let's look at my home currency, the British pound, the great mighty British pound. Well, it started off at $1.60 is what it would have bought back in 2012. Fast forward to today, and now it'll buy you about $1.11. So again, it's devalued against the dollar. The yen, he mentioned the yen as well. Well, the yen started off, would have bought about 12 cents, and now what does it buy? Basically nothing. Basically nothing. It's really collapsed against the dollar. And you're going to find this very interesting. I found this very interesting. I found one currency that's actually done okay, kind of. And that would be the Russian ruble. So the Russian ruble, you'll see, it used to buy 3 cents per ruble. However, it had a big decline if you look in 2014. Now, why did it decline in 2014? I looked that up. Basically, there was economic sanctions contributed to the decline of the ruble, since some Russian oil companies have been prevented from rolling over debt, forcing them to exchange their rubles for US dollars or other foreign currencies on the open market to meet their interest payment obligations. If you recall, they did invade Crimea and actually took Crimea off Ukraine at that point in time, and then a whole host of sanctions were placed on the ruble, and the ruble fell as a result. And that is basically what we're seeing here, this decline here, if you look at that part of the graph, 2014. When they invaded Ukraine again, so you can see it kind of stayed in parity. If you look at that section from kind of 2015 to late 2021, you can see it pretty much stayed level with the dollar at a level somewhere around 1.5 cents basically per ruble. It then collapsed upon the invasion. And then look at this, and it's an interesting thing. It came back up. What happened there to make it come back up? And it went back up to pretty much the same as it had been, 117, very similar to this level here. And what happened there? Putin said, oil. If you're going to buy our oil, you're going to buy our Russian gas, you have to pay in rubles. And that basically supported the currency, because it's essentially pegged down to oil and gas, which Russia have a lot of. So that is why that came back against the dollar. Needless to say, even if you're in Russia, you're still experiencing inflation. The value of your currency has still gone down in relation to other things. And the same goes for people in America, I'm afraid, as my American viewers will be able to attest, things are getting more expensive. So the value of all currencies have been declining. Now, one of the things I want you to notice here, when you look at the euro, the pound and the yen, look what happened around this point here, February 2022, February, March 2022, there's this sudden rapid decline at the end. So if you notice, they've all got a rapid decline at the end, always round about that March, always starting around March 2022, boom, down. Same for the yen, around February, March 2022, boom, down. What happened there, do you think, to make that happen? Well, I can show you that. If we look at the interest rates of the Fed, you can see this. I'm going to zoom in a little bit actually for this. So let's go into about there. So from 2012, the period we were looking at before. And if you look what happened, they started increasing their interest rates in March. And they increased it very aggressively. And basically other central banks are now playing catch up. The Fed got in early and started increasing their interest rates earlier than other central banks. Here in the UK, our central bank is now starting to increase its interest rates, and obviously as they do, they will start to catch up. The other thing obviously that will affect the other currencies and why people would be going to the dollar would be because it is the reserve currency of the world, and if you think there's going to be a nuclear war, then you tend to run to the reserve currency, and obviously Putin has been saber rattling on the nukes. So there is that potential, and if the world is in crisis, people do tend to go to the reserve currency. So that would be one of the reasons for the current dip that all currencies have had against the dollar. So I personally think they will come back, but over the long run, all currencies are ultimately, including the dollar, ultimately declining in buying power. So anyway, let's get back to the video.
Before we get to China, let me pick up on exactly that point. Given what you're saying about the world in terms of inflation and the reduction in the value of the currencies around the world, where is the right storehold of wealth? I mean, is it gold? Is it Bitcoin? Where do you go to defend yourself against inflation?
This is the question of our time. We will, over the next 10 years, certainly, I think, be trying to find the answer of what is the storehold of wealth, because usually it's a money and then a debt instrument in holding that money. But as that goes down, then there is the question of what it is. What is that currency and storehold of wealth? So we're in that place. It's always handy to be the thing that is your buying power. You're going to see it more in inflation hedge assets. So like if you're thinking about a bond, it's better to think about an inflation hedge bond than to think about a TIPS or inflation hedge assets along those lines. And I think that you're going to see then the parts of the economy. So like I think basically if I was saving, what would I want to save in? I'd like to save in the things I know that I'm going to need. So I would like to save in, like, my residence, my house. I would like to save, if I could, pay forward my kids' education, pay forward the food or the health care that I can, and so on. I would want to save in those things to buy forward the things I need, most fundamentally. I think if we start to think that way, not only in terms of the investment, but what are even the meat and potatoes type of businesses that are doing that?
Okay, so what are the meat and potato kind of businesses? What things do I need? That was what he said. What things do I need? Because what he sees is the value of your currency is going down. So the more things you can buy in advance, the better. He's essentially saying stockpile, I suppose. But residence. So I'm thinking buildings. He's basically saying property values are going to increase. Food value is going to increase. That's commodity based, isn't it? Healthcare, the cost is going to increase. Education, the cost is going to increase. Of course it is. If the value of the currency is going down, the value of the labour has to go up. So what you want to look for, according to Ray Dalio, is anything that benefits from inflation or the deflation of the currency. So if you have any suggestions at all on companies that provide those meat and potatoes kind of necessities that Ray Dalio is speaking about there, please let me know in the comments down below. That would be good for me and anybody else watching, because I'd love to see what companies you think are going to do well in the coming decade. That would be a very interesting thing to do. But essentially, it's things that will go up in value. So I personally think REITs should be good if it's a REIT that actually owns the property, because essentially you're getting the benefit, just like a landlord would, of the capital gain on the property as the currency goes down, because it's a tangible asset. I would expect mining companies will probably be quite good. So if anyone can recommend any good mining companies, I'm particularly interested in ones with a good dividend yield. So if you could recommend those in the comments down below, that would be great as well. And obviously foodstuffs, commodities, water. He didn't comment on oil, and I would be interested to think how that's going to go, because obviously we've got a whole trend now to environmentally friendly energy sources, and yet look at all the problems we're having when the oil supply and gas supply are being constricted. I dread to think what's going to happen in Europe this winter, but it's not going to be pretty. And bear in mind, Germany have spent an absolute fortune on renewable technology, and now they're saying we're going to build nuclear power plants because they've realised the solar and the wind that they've invested in isn't enough to provide the energy they need, and they're reliant on gas primarily from Russia, and therein lies the problem when the tap's being turned off. So that does make me think maybe gas and oil stocks aren't as bad as everybody thinks. Maybe they might have a bit more longevity. I'd again love to know what your thoughts are on that. Personally, I don't hold any at the moment, but I would be interested to know what your thoughts are, and it is something I intend to research a little further. Anyway, I think that's a good place to end this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've had a nice day, and bye-bye.